Imagine waking up one morning and realizing that the silence in your phone feels louder than any argument you have ever had. The messages slow down, the invitations disappear, and the people who once laughed the loudest at your table suddenly seem busy, distant, or gone. Failure has a strange way of echoing through your social world, not because you have changed overnight, but because the spotlight of success has quietly turned off. In that dim light, you begin to see relationships differently, and sometimes the hardest truth appears. Not everyone was meant to stay when the applause stopped. This moment feels confusing and deeply personal, yet it is far more universal than most people admit, and it marks the beginning of what can become a powerful social reset. When life is moving upward, friendships often feel effortless because momentum carries everyone forward together, and people are naturally drawn to movement, excitement, and possibility. But the moment momentum stops, the emotional gravity of failure begins to test every bond around you. Some people do not leave because they are cruel or heartless. They leave because they were never prepared to understand the quieter seasons of your life. Others step away because your struggle forces them to confront fears they have been trying to avoid in their own lives. And then there are the few who stay silent, unsure of what to say, slowly fading into the background until distance replaces familiarity. This experience can feel like rejection, but in reality, it is revelation, and that distinction changes everything. As Dr. Grandpa Henry often reminds us in his philosophy of resilience, failure is not only a test of personal strength, but also a mirror that reveals the true structure of our social world. When the mirror appears, it does not flatter, and it does not apologize. It simply shows you what was always there beneath the surface of celebration and comfort. You begin to recognize how many connections were built around shared excitement rather than shared understanding. You start to notice how many conversations revolved around achievements rather than growth. And in that realization, something uncomfortable begins to grow: the awareness that losing people after failure may not be a punishment, but a transition. The pain of distance can feel sharp, because it challenges the identity you built around belonging, acceptance, and shared momentum. Yet hidden beneath that discomfort is a quiet opportunity to redefine what connection truly means. This is the moment where the story shifts, even if you do not recognize it yet, because the social reset has already begun. At first, the social reset feels like an empty room, with echoes of laughter still floating in the air, and the mind begins to replay memories like a movie searching for the exact scene where everything changed. Questions rise quietly, but persistently, asking whether the failure pushed people away, or whether their distance was always waiting for the right moment to appear. This is where suspense quietly enters the journey, because the truth does not reveal itself all at once, and the mind starts creating stories to fill the silence. It wonders if the friendships were conditional, if the support was tied to progress, or if success had unknowingly become the currency that kept every connection active. The longer the silence stretches, the heavier the uncertainty becomes, and the heart begins to fear that the circle may never feel full again. Yet beneath that fear, something unexpected begins to unfold, something subtle and easy to miss if you are not paying attention. With fewer voices around you, the noise of expectations begins to fade, and in that quiet space, self-awareness grows stronger. The pressure to perform socially disappears, and for the first time in a long while, there is room to ask honest questions about the kind of environment you truly need. This stage feels uncomfortable because it removes distraction, and without distraction, clarity begins to rise. Dr. Grandpa Henry often described this moment as the hallway between two lives, a place where the past no longer fits and the future has not yet opened its doors. The hallway feels narrow, uncertain, and endless, but it is also the only path forward. In this hallway, the fear of permanent loneliness can grow loud, whispering that the silence will stretch forever, but that fear hides an important truth. The silence is temporary, and it is creating space for something new. The suspense deepens when you realize that rebuilding a supportive environment is not about chasing the people who left, but about becoming the version of yourself that attracts people who understand growth, resilience, and reinvention. This realization shifts the focus from loss to construction, from absence to possibility, and from fear to intention. The social reset begins to feel less like a punishment and more like preparation, even though the final outcome remains unseen. Every day in this uncertain phase becomes a quiet test of patience and belief, asking whether you can trust the process before you see the results. The mind still fears the unknown, yet the heart slowly begins to accept that the next circle will not look like the last one. And in that acceptance, the suspense reaches its peak, because the future is closer than it appears. The turning point arrives quietly, almost gently, when the focus shifts from who disappeared to who you are becoming, and in that moment, the social reset transforms from a painful ending into a deliberate beginning. The emptiness that once felt heavy now starts to feel spacious, like a cleared field waiting for new foundations, and a realization emerges that building a supportive environment is not about replacing people quickly, but about choosing connections wisely. This stage requires courage because it asks you to move differently than before, to prioritize depth over familiarity, and to value growth over comfort. You begin to understand that the next circle must be built intentionally, shaped by shared values, mutual encouragement, and the willingness to stand together during uncertain seasons. The lessons of failure become the blueprint for stronger relationships, teaching you to recognize authenticity, emotional maturity, and resilience in others. Instead of chasing approval, you start attracting alignment, and that shift changes the entire direction of your social world. As Dr. Grandpa Henry often emphasized in his teachings about reinvention, the people who belong in your future will not be threatened by your setbacks because they understand that struggle is part of every meaningful journey. They will not disappear when progress slows because they measure connection by character rather than momentum. This realization brings a powerful sense of peace, replacing the old fear that failure would isolate you forever. Slowly, new conversations begin to appear. New connections form through shared interests, shared effort, and shared honesty, and each interaction feels more grounded than the last. The circle rebuilds itself quietly, without dramatic announcements, until one day you look around and notice that the silence has been replaced with voices that feel steady and genuine. The social reset completes its transformation, revealing that losing friends after failure was never the end of belonging, but the beginning of choosing belonging more wisely. What once felt like rejection now feels like redirection, guiding you toward a community that reflects who you are becoming rather than who you used to be. The journey teaches that relationships evolve just as people evolve, and the strongest connections are built in the moments when life feels uncertain rather than easy. This new understanding creates a sense of gratitude for the reset itself, because without it, the opportunity to rebuild intentionally might never have appeared. The story closes, not with loss, but with renewal, reminding you that every ending quietly prepares the ground for a stronger beginning. If you are benefiting from our topics, please subscribe, like, and turn on the bell notification so you can see our new videos early.